All right, welcome to the conversation on the TYT Network. We promised you guys interesting guests. I think we're going to deliver today. James Felton Keith is joining us. He's running for Congress in the 13th district, and you will not be able to put him in a box. He's he is a unique candidate. He's running against a Democratic incumbent. We generally tend to like that here on the program. So, James, great to have you on.
Thanks. Yeah.
So, as a matter of background, you got an engineering degree, I believe, from Tuskegee University, and then economics degree from Harvard. You believe in universal basic income. I think you call yourself a progressive, but not a socialist. So already we're having fun. That's a lot of different angles.
Yeah. Go. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. So let me start with this. Why run against a Democratic incumbent? What's driving you?
Well, two things, right? So I do identify as a progressive without being a socialist. And I do think that a universal basic income is the most moral policy that we can distribute to start to bring people together. I won't say again, but start to bring people together for the first time. That's number one. And so I'm running this particular race because I think that this district, being the second most blue voting district in the country, that even shocked me when I found it out, has not reaped a lot of benefits for being so blue, so dedicated, so committed to the party over time. And so our campaign slogan is, quite frankly, we owe us. And it's really about what we owe ourselves as a district, as a community, from the standpoint of courage. So I'm running because the conversation of 2020s is wildly different than what it has been over the course of the past 50 years. But I'm also running against an incumbent who barely won his primary in 2016 and, for all better purposes, doesn't represent the district. He's not a progressive. He helped build the Republican arm of the party. He has constantly endorsed the racist policies of his home country, the Dominican Republic, and their denationalization of Haitian citizens and Haitian descendants in the Dominican Republic. He's also funded a whole lot of anti-LGBT candidates around the state at the state and municipal level. And again, he just doesn't represent the values of a district that is so blue. We are a progressive district through and through up here in Harlem, Washington Heights, Inwood, and Kingsbridge. So that's why we're.
I didn't even get to that part. So it says in your bio that you're the first Black LGBT candidate in the country. Is that true? That seems unbelievable.
Well, yeah. So I ran an exploratory campaign. We ran a campaign in 2017, 2018 to see what our chances were against the party machine. Because what happened in 2016 when this incumbent got in office is the party sort of split. The old Harlem party split from Adriano's, my opponent's win. And we wanted to see, what our real chances were. And I think Forbes at that time ran an article. I did an event with Start Out, which is, for folks who aren't familiar, is like a startup org for LGBT entrepreneurs. And it was on a Capitol Hill. And I got a bit of press from that. And one of the journalists said, I think you are the first Black queer person or Black LGBT person identifies by to run for federal office, period. So it's sort of federal office via U.S. Congress. And then, 2 years later, we've got a lot of, brown people running. We have someone running in the 17th and the 15th. And so I think folks are seeing that it's viable. I don't think that a lot of people thought it would be, especially because Harlem is such a large part of our district and people traditionally think that it's more conservative. But it's not. It's not. It's very diverse. It's a different Harlem than it was in 1920 or 1960.
So James, what part of the incumbent? I mean, you said I think you said something along the lines of he votes like a Republican. That's fighting words in a district that blue. So yeah. So help me understand how so. What do you think that he votes for? Sure. That is not progressive enough for that district?
Well, I'll say this. In Congress, he has definitely toed the line because the pressure is on, because he has a real competitor. And we like that. That's democracy working, for lack of better phrases. But he's been in the state Senate and the state assembly for a long time. And while there, for about 25 years, he helped build a strictly Republican caucusing branch of the New York State Senate called the IDC, the Independent Democrats. And we ran a large campaign a few years ago to get rid of all of them. There were 8 of them, and we got rid of everyone except for 1 seat. And we managed to make New York State blue again. And now the challenge of the state bodies, the Assembly and the Senate, is to actually back up all of its progressive talk. But he was a core player in stifling that for over a decade. And that's what I really mean. You know, the lip service that comes out about how he cares about immigration or healthcare or Green New Deal or you name it is rhetoric. But his actual backings and the folks that he's taking money from and the people that he's interacting with shows that he's available to sell his vote and sell his real strategy to the highest bidder. That's exactly.
So, all right. James, you already got my support on 2 grounds. First of all, if he's IDC, forget it. Totally conservative, totally corporate. It's over, right? Yeah. And second of all, you know what I like, James? We get a lot of candidates on here, and I understand why a lot of them are cautious. You are calling it out, okay? You're not messing around. You're saying it as you think it and as you think it really is. And I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
And you know, you've got courage going in all directions because, you know, in a district that blue, just flat out saying you're not a socialist also takes some degree of courage. And so to help me understand what I think there's a big difference between progressive and socialist, but I want to hear your take on it.
Well, you know, a few things on that. So I think I'm the only candidate in this cycle, or any for that matter, to lay out a broader political ideology. We call it inclusionism. And it, you know, for anyone who goes to inclusionism.org or goes to our website and checks out the links there, they'll see where we toe the line between the sort of individual freedoms that libertarians like and the sort of communal support that Democrats like to push. Again, from a democratic standpoint, we're far, far left of anything that would be considered conservative. I think we're left of everyone who would just consider themselves blue in general. But to that point, you know, the majority of my district, for as diverse as it is still very Black, very old school African-American Black. And when I say Black, I just mean, you know, Harlem, Detroit, Chicago, New Orleans kind of Black folks, right? Southern part of LA, Oakland folks for you know, California people. And Black people are not socialists, even though you have some who are out there who back it up. And I have a lot of peers that I like who are running as Democratic socialists, who I've had up here on my local radio show that I do in Harlem every Sunday. But the difference is we require an equity stake, an ownership stake. I'm not for endorsing, and I know that this is an oversimplification, a government management of the distribution of, say, a jobs guarantee, for instance. I don't understand how that works. It's nearly impossible. But what I do like is decoupling income from wages specifically and paying people what they're owed. I think when you talk to Black people who have no education or a whole lot of education around any of these big cities, what we all want is our just due. And our economic inclusion is a abode of justice. And it has nothing to do with the socialism of the 20th century. I think a lot of people who are using that rhetoric are either young and naive, or they're lazy from a creativity standpoint, because this era, this generation, it's allowing us a whole lot of opportunities that we weren't allowed before to craft new economic and new community thinking around how we go forward. So we're just trying to do the 21st century thing, and that's the play.
All right. I promised people you'd be interesting. You are. So what does we owe us mean?
We owe us is really, it's sort of a spiritual call to courage, right? So the majority of my campaign, the crux of my campaign is around ownership. It's around what we're owed. I spent my career as an engineer and an economist, and I write or have advocated for the vast majority of cybersecurity and data policy on the planet, this country, Europe, East Asia, you name it. And my life's work has really been trying to solve one problem. Engineers only want to solve distribution problems if they're actually engineers. And the distribution problem I see that we're failing at is really to how do we distribute value to people? And so what I've been working on for at least the past decade is how to recodify data as an asset class so that I can democratize every productivity structure, every profit structure to give us back our rightful equity stake. And so We Owe Us is about having the courage to own our own identities and fight for the money, quite frankly, and the inclusion that we're owed from this time. And I think that's the political conversation of the 2020s. It's not one of justice alone. We need a little bit more than justice, a whole lot more. Than justice.
James Felton Keith, he will not play your game. He'll play his game. I love it. I mean, look, and Andrew Yang endorsed you, but you said you have a different way of financing the universal basic income than he does. So a true independent man, I don't mean independent as in politics, I just mean someone who speaks his own mind and has his own mind. So James, please give us your website.
Everyone can just go to jamesfeltonkeith.com, or you can go to weoweus.org to just look at the policy platform. Everything is right there. If you want to donate, you can go to votejfk.org, and it'll take you, straight to an Act Blue account. But we got a lot of allies for what you mentioned, whether they're the Yangs of the world or other folks. But our solution sets are really around equity. It's a very Americana way of including people in the 21st century. At least.
By the way, to show you how slow I am and how much smarter you are than I am, I finally got that JFK on your hat is James Felton Keith.
Oh yeah, ran with this in Harlem. It wasn't me. A bunch of activists just start coming together, and a while ago, they just moved away from the James to JFK. I think it was really because, this is not a joke, they couldn't remember my name. I have 3 first names, and they just said JFK works, and we'll figure out how it works later. So that's what I'm running with. Yeah.
Okay, it's not a joke, but it's funny. James/JFK, thank you for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
On the go? Don't worry, we got you covered. You can still listen to TYT at our new podcast network. Find us on Apple Podcasts, the Google Play Store, or at tyt.com/podcast.